Now to the Raiders. They didn't draft a quarterback last week. We wondered if they would. Vegas used its first-round pick on tight end Brock Bowers, taking him 13th overall. Remember that Michael Penix Jr. was already off the board. He joins other offseason additions like Gardner Minshew and Alexander Mattison, and the Raiders are also signing Michael Gallup to a one-year deal to add even more receiver depth. Jeff, what more can you add about the Raiders adding Gallup to the roster?
Well, it's interesting only because of what you just said. This is a team already stacked at the wide receiver position. It feels like their depth chart is pretty much complete, and they really have 3 pass-catching tight ends as well. So Michael Gallup, nonetheless, signing a one-year deal worth $3 million to see if he can perhaps reignite a career that kind of never got off the ground in Dallas. I mean, he had his obvious moments, especially against Green Bay this past January. But generally speaking, ever since he tore his ACL, he has not been the same. We'll see if maybe he can reignite that flame now in Las Vegas.
I think it's important to remember that it was a bit of a surprise, Dan, that Michael Penix Jr. went at 8th overall to the Falcons, because you got to wonder if he was still on the board if Vegas would have taken him. But either way, how confident are we in the Raiders this year after missing out on a quarterback in the draft?
About as confident as Hawk is on his Instagram filter that he's using on screen right now.
It's pretty,
Your
man.
skin looks amazing.
We need that
It looks
in
absolutely
studio.
spectacular.
It's not fair.
I don't get it.
He got one of the movie cameras.
It's like an avatar.
He don't look that good. He got one of
It
the
looks
movie
like
cameras.
AI, honestly. It doesn't look
you
that
look
good.
fake. You look
What's
like
your
a doll.
esthetician, huh?
Hawk said,
My
"Oh, stop."
goodness, man.
But keep it coming.
Listen, he does. I'm going to keep
Dan,
some
go.
comments to myself. I think the Raiders have a really good, young, active defense and a quarterback that thrives in 12 personnel, plays above, I guess, the expectation in 12 personnel. They have Michael Mayer from last year's second round out of Notre Dame. They take Brock Bowers out of Georgia this year. And we're just talking about the performance of the quarterback. We know Devontae Adams is going to be a big-time playmaker, but Gardner Minshew in anything but 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends, is a relatively average quarterback. In 12 personnel, again, with 2 tight ends on the field, he's a pretty darn good quarterback. 8 touchdowns, 2 picks, 66% completion percentage.
Yeah.
So I just expect the Raiders, and they've got the people to do it. Those 2 tight ends, Devontae, I think that they've got the really good pieces to play the ideal situational football that Gardner Minshew seems to be comfortable in.
I love the pieces, to Dan's point. I think that they are stacked from a pass-catching perspective. We know what they have a receiver. I think Brock Bowers becomes your number 2 receiver in this offense. My question isn't around O'Connell. It's not around Gardner Minshew. It's around Luke Getsy. From what we've seen of him last year in the Chicago Bears, knowing that the quarterback play, like when you look around the division, they're at best 3, maybe even 4. Is the play caller going to be enough to get what you need out of this offense? And that's where my questions and concerns come from, because early on last season, when he was with Chicago, we routinely, week in and week out, questioned that very thing. And I would argue this situation is no better at the quarterback position than it was last year. It may even be worse than Justin Fields and what he provided for Chicago.
Yeah, Hawk, I thought about that as well, but I'm with Dan. I focused more on Garner, and you think about this particular situation because a lot of the talk we had pre-draft was the fact that this team could potentially get Michael Penix. That was a name that kept coming up with the Las Vegas Raiders. Gardner Minshew played really good at moments last year, and he understands how to use big receivers. And that's something that I know sounds very general, but that's what he had success with last year with Pittman. And you think about walking into this situation, even the signing of Gallup, that's what came to my mind. Big receivers that can win 50-50 balls. And Gardner Minshew has some athleticism. He has some playmaking ability beyond what they do in the play call in the huddle. But to your point, Luke Getsy has to be ready for what he has offensively, because we talked about it ad nauseum when we were at the draft. Had it not been for Brock Bowers' injury, he may have been the best offensive weapon in this draft. So he has a lot at his disposal. They did work on the defensive side. They have who I think is a top 5 defender in the NFL in Max Crosby. They signed Christian Wilkins. This team could sneak up on people if they're just thinking, well, going to the quarterback, and they don't really have that guy that they went after in the draft. This could be good for the Vegas Raiders as long as their offensive coordinator is better than he was in Chicago, to Hawk's point.
Swag, that defense allowed the fewest points in the NFL over the final 10 weeks last season, Dan.
Yeah, Dak Prescott and Justin Fields. Marcus, to your point, we think this team's got a chance to be a decent football team. Okay, 8-9, 9-8. They're not going to be drafting early. The two free agent quarterbacks that have a chance at least to be big-time free agents next year are Dak Prescott and Justin Fields. Gardner Minshew, I love this and that, but they need a dude. Those are the two names. You're not going to be high enough in the draft to be able to go get somebody up early. That's what I'm saying.
Dan, I would have tried to sneak a meeting with Dak people already.
100%.
I would have already, if I was the Vegas Raiders, I would have already tried to figure out where is my ends on the Dak Prescott sweepstakes that's about to come up.
Get ahead.
If this deal doesn't get done in Dallas.
Correct.
Man, that's exciting to think about. Not for Cowboys fans, but for Raiders fans and maybe for the AFC West.